welcome to Lockdown Coffee. This is episode 3, and I'm very, very excited with the panel that we have this week. On Lockdown Coffee, we like to have a chat with each other about what's happening in the lockdown situation, how we're adapting, how we're reacting. And today, hopefully, we're going to also talk about a few pertinent things that are happening in terms of what the process is going to be for exiting. So I'm really happy to welcome Max Dubiel from Redemption Roasters, Tom Sobey from Origin, Edwin Harrison from Artisan School and Curious Roo, Catalina Gutierrez from Cata Exports, and James Hennerby from Rosslyn. Welcome, everybody. How are you all doing?
Good.
Very well, yeah.
Good, thank you.
Good.
Yeah, good.
So let's get down to the nitty gritty. Challenges. There have been a few. What's the single biggest challenge? Let's start with the single biggest challenge. And Catalina, just before we pressed record, we were talking a little bit about what's happening out there in Colombia. So maybe you can start and then we'll go round.
Yeah, sure. The biggest challenge is the uncertainty, not knowing what's next. The Colombian first harvest started this month. We are starting to pick the coffee, and we don't know what's going to happen. At the moment, everything is looking okay in Colombia. The government is doing great things. People are healthy, but we have a lot of expectations and fear, and I think that's the challenge, because you don't know what's the best move for the future. So farmers are really apprehensive. It's just the main challenge here in Colombia at the moment. What's next? Yeah.
How about you, James? Obviously you were setting up a new shop, weren't you, just before all this happened?
Yeah, we still are. Like, it's still very much on track. It's just, as with everything, there's just been a bit of a pause to it. There's there's a multitude of challenges. Initially, it was, first and foremost, most about protecting the business and the jobs of those who work within it. Our team, we've got a very close-knit team, so it was about protecting them. And then once the government stepped in with the 80% furlough, then you had that. It was balanced with that moral dilemma of trying to save people's jobs, but also not being irresponsible and in terms of health and safety. And so we decided to close the shop straight away once the furlough came in. And now, we flipped our business to an online business overnight, and we're just trying to stay abreast of everything that's happening. Like, even just this morning, just trying to keep abreast of any updates. We got challenges with our landlords, with insurance companies. It's we've never worked harder than we currently are right now. So yeah, it's sort of coming from all sides, but it keeps you on your toes, that's for sure.
Certainly true that we're all working a lot harder. I must admit, I didn't expect to be doing quite as much work as I'm doing right now. How about you, Edwin? You've got you're balancing 3 businesses. So 3 times the hard work, 3 times the challenges.
I agree with James that I don't think Meg and I have ever worked harder. The problem with furloughing sort of 40 plus people is suddenly you're by yourselves again, and it's quite unique to find yourself running a tiny little business again where it's just the 2 of you. I think the challenges vary from very big ones that are kind of out of your control, like the uncertainty that we were talking about earlier, which obviously creates a lot of problems because it's very hard to plan for, all the way through to very specific challenges, such as dealing with landlords that are refusing to cooperate or refusing to reduce the rent and so on and so forth, and trying to negotiate all these. So it's very much back to that sort of entrepreneurial spirit, isn't it? Where you're sort of, like you said, changing a business in a night to be online and all these sorts of things. So with that challenge, I think comes quite a lot of energy and excitement, and like you really got to power through to get through this, because unfortunately, I think otherwise a lot of businesses are going to really struggle, especially if this lockdown continues long into the distance. I think we can all deal with, a month, 2 months, but if it really does end up being extended, then a whole new set of challenges will arise.
You
Tom?
when you said excitement, Edwin, it's quite interesting, isn't it? When you start business and you're on your own and you've got all these things going on and you're toing and froing to maybe when you're more established. But actually, it's quite a good term for it, because actually when it all started happening, it very much reminded me of when I started Origin, juggling many plates. And although it was terrifying, it was also quite sort of thrilling at the same time of all these things that were going on. Yeah, certainly. A multitude of emotions for sure.
Yeah. I think, for example, I think a lot of people who've grown their businesses in coffee over the last sort of 8 years have sort of got to that point where they've got a whole support structure around them to support them. And now that, if you're looking after your team, like James said, then that's almost gone because we furloughed a lot of them. So that structure's disappeared. So that almost, I spent most of this morning grinding coffee and delivering it in my car to people around our shops, and there's some, we were really trying again and relaunching, and part of it, I'm being honest, is quite exciting, quite fun, off you go again. There's all this daunting stuff and horrible stuff around you that's also very scary about, what's going to happen, but at the same time, you've got to keep focusing on other opportunities.
But in a way, that's a good thing, isn't it? To have that, to be an entrepreneur means to be excited about change, and to, and it's one of the things that makes an entrepreneur is to look at change and see it as an opportunity. And while this is, incredibly challenging for a lot of people, and obviously, the amount of businesses that are really going to struggle, but those that are entrepreneurial, that can make changes, and a lot of things I've been hearing, and Max, obviously you've been hearing it alongside me as well, but it is that there's this desire to almost change the business model, but surely that also has massive challenges, right?
Absolutely. I think the amount of apps I've downloaded of businesses that only allow purchasing through the app now is higher than ever, and so there are a lot of opportunities in that field, and getting people to consume in other ways. I think we all have been amazed by the amount of web orders that can come through, and that's and quickly dealing with that sort of demand. James setting up an online store pretty much in the course of a weekend is impressive.
Definitely.
What are your thoughts, Max, on sort of veering away from what we probably, like everybody, seen just wholesale stop and then online orders expand, and then the temptations to think, well, okay, so we have a good online business, so should we look at other revenue streams within that? Should we perhaps look at things like capsules, putting tea, chocolate, I don't know, just the fear is then you start moving away from your core brand values, but also, I guess, as we say, when, as you were saying, it's a bit of a fight, isn't it? It's almost back to the early days where you're on the ground and actually you're just trying to make a living. And I guess if anybody's going, if you're ever going to sacrifice brand values, probably now is the time that not you'll get away with it, but certainly capsules for us has been a conversation for a long time, but it's not something that we've been touring and throwing, but I think it's something that now, if we're going to do it, now is probably the time to do it, because there is this huge online demand for it, and away you go.
It's an interesting one with two co-founders in our business. I'm usually the more experimental one, and the one who's always keen to pivot and take the newest opportunity. And Ted, my business partner, usually says, "Hold your horses. Is it brand additive? Is it actually going to help us in the long run?" And I've already spoken to him that maybe we should think about becoming bakeries, or we should get into Aspects walls. And every single time he shoots me down and says, "Max, it's rubbish. Let's focus on what we're really good at." But I think there are things that are brand additive, like a good online shop, offering more things there, offering packages there, offering capsules, and it's probably twice or three times as difficult starting a new product line in these days, just because we have no staff, and suppliers tend to be slow or not reactive at all. But yeah, I think if there is potential that in a year's time it's still going to be an interesting and brand additive resource, then we're looking at it.
Is there any kind of feeling around consumers changing their behavior in the long term? I mean, I noticed that there was something that was put up about in China, in Wuhan, even though they're now allowed to go out despite having certain social distancing measures, they're still not going into restaurants, for instance. So that hospitality element and socialization is being curbed somehow by consumers' own behavior, not by the government or being told what they can and can't do and how far they can stand from each other. So is there any feeling from your own customers what they are thinking of or how they're feeling going forward, or are you still are we all still completely in the dark?
I think it's a good question. I think there's probably quite a lot of worry out there at the moment from coffee shops who have a business model that clearly works and has worked for many years. And then the worry is that, well, what if you're not allowed have-ins anymore and only takeaways for the next year and a half? And therefore, could the business model still be applicable to the site that you currently have and the rent you're currently paying and so on and so forth? Or will it just not work? Will you not be able to do enough throughput to be able to justify that site? And actually what you need is a hole in the wall, something a lot smaller, much more suitable to that sort of takeaway only trade. So I think people are genuinely quite worried at the moment about whether we'll be allowed to go back to the old ways, and if not, can it actually work in the locations that we've got? I think is a concern.
And is there going to be a massive impact on actually the long-term supply of green coffee into the roasters as well? I'm just conscious we've got roasters and, you know, and Catalina's here.
Kat can probably talk. I would probably say the other. I think, speaking from sort of the conversations that we have, that obviously we as a business, our wholesale business is probably 90% of what we do is completely stopped. So Frida, our head of coffee, we work in our direct trade model with lots of different people, lots of forward contracts, lots of volumes committed forward, and essentially overnight 90% of that volume is gone. So I mean, it's interesting. Like I say, I was reading about maybe crop shortages because of the lack of pickers, this, that, and the other. But in my experience, the fear is it's the opposite, is that we're going to be awash with green coffee, because we certainly have, I think we have 5 containers arriving from Nicaragua in the next 2 weeks, which, essentially, we don't really have a home for that coffee at the moment, because although our web shop is really, really busy, it's busy in terms of monetary value, but it's not busy in terms of coffee volume. So in my thoughts, I mean, I don't know what Kat thinks of that, the problem is going to be is that we're going to be awash with specialty coffee, which is going to cause its own problems.
Definitely. From my independent angle, I'm really small. It's just only me running this exporter company. But I had some contracts just about to be signed with people in the UK. We were going to run my first container with a company in Suffolk. And all of that got cancelled. All of our plans got cancelled. But connecting with what Max said about being creative, suddenly I got into panela, cacao, and people from Russia contacted me asking for instant coffee, for instance. So suddenly having to think about all of these new products, and also trying to research quickly how can you trade the coffee you have already in stock to convert it into something else. So it's massive research and things that we are doing at the moment with new products within coffee. Just being creative and shape that business model is just hard work and fun as well.
It's also it's a bit of a ticking time bomb as well, because if you think about the work we do with you, James, and sort of the coffees that we supply to Rosslyn is come December, we're going to want to be fresh crop Brazils coming into the new house espresso. So we've currently got a certain amount of coffee that actually we're going to have to use. Otherwise, we're going to have to be thinking about old crop coffee or crop past that, which obviously is in nobody's interest to do, because we don't want to supply old crop coffee to cafes, but essentially, yeah, it's trying to balance all of that. And it's I think, James, we touched on it yesterday. They're all good conversations, really, really difficult conversations, because ultimately, irresponsible to commit to something you can't pay for either. So if you have a commitment, you want to honor that commitment, but actually, if you honor that commitment knowing you can't pay for that commitment, then that's also highly irresponsible to say to a grower, well, yeah, keep sending it, and then turn around and say, well, actually, I can't pay you because I've got no volume for it. So yeah, it's a really, my personal opinion is that, yeah, this is going to be a real challenge for everyone in terms of green coffee. It really, really is.
Yeah, so one of the things that you said there just made me think about those difficult conversations, because I think you're obviously difficult conversations with suppliers who you may have to sort of push back, which is, when it comes to bringing in green, has massive implications in terms of the supply chain and the livelihood of those people and their families. But equally, something that's come up a few times is that at this moment in time, it feels like there's two sides. There's the people who are talking to each other, the suppliers who are talking, and the the accounts who are talking to their suppliers and actually coming up with great solutions. And then there's the clients who are just not responding to emails, and the suppliers who are just invoicing regardless. I'm not asking you for an answer, but what are your views on, if we are going to be going in longer than we thought, how can we get those conversations going? What can we do to talk more to each other so that this is something that we're all doing together, rather than banging our heads against the wall?
I think it's difficult, Anya, isn't it? Because we sit in the middle of a supply chain of supplying roasted coffee, cafes, buying green coffee, etc. And ultimately, if somebody doesn't have the money, they can't pay the money.
Yeah.
But I think conversation is key. And James, the number of conversations that we've had over the last month has been one of the highlights of this whole situation, is reconnecting with customers. And I think Edwin and Max and Leah, when I started Origin, I used to do everything, and you have this starting of a business where you have customers, you become friends with customers, and then you start employing people, and they take on those responsibilities, and then they become more distant. You might see them at London Coffee Festival. And actually, since we furloughed the majority of our staff, I've been spending a lot more time engaging with our customers and people who I've known for a long time. And actually, I've thoroughly enjoyed that. It's been really, really good to catch up. But I just think honest, open conversations are the key. And for us, it's also making sure that nobody within the supply chain sits on cash. So actually, if I could make sure all of what we are doing as a business, as people pay us, we are paying then down further along the supply chain. We're not sitting on that, because it's really, really important that when we come out of this, that we have a supply chain to lean back on. And it's the same for the cafes, for the roasters, for the finance people, for the importers, exporters. Nobody within those chains can afford to sit on cash. Otherwise, the whole thing will collapse. So we are, as we receive payments, we're making payments. We're not just collating those payments and saying, well, we're going to be okay because everybody's paying us and I'll just take advantage of the situation. But I fear a number of people will.
Speaking with Tom there at Origin almost daily, and we're paying our bills there. They're just going a little bit slower than usual. But I think that there's a couple of things. But when my business partner Matt, when this all started, I remember saying to him about we just need to be conscious and considered in how we react, and no knee-jerk reactions, because whatever this is that we're in, it'll pass. But what will stay is how people behave. And I think that a lot of people's values, or a lot of businesses' values, mainly positive, but some negative, are rising to the top. I mean, there's some high street chains there that are behaving not in the best manner, but we all knew that they were like that anyway. And then there's people like companies like Origin, who they've been phenomenal to us, and the support that they've provided, and well before all this. And then now this has happened, they're taking such good care of us, and that's just their values rising to the top. And I'd be saying that whether Tom was in this call or not, you know.
But it's funny, James, isn't it? Because I think, like I say, like I was, it's for me, it's been really reassuring to have conversations with you every day. We've been chatting about lots of just different things, but also sharing thoughts on how we plan this and how we get through this. And knee-jerk reactions are, you know, those early, that first Monday, I think it was, when they said don't go to cafes, restaurants, and we had a conversation, and, you know, we suddenly saw the next day everybody stopped ordering coffee, the cafes were going down, but those conversations were really, they were good conversations for us to have, because actually they almost took your mind off it as well, although we were discussing it, but problem shared and all that. And
I think as well as just like, again, just not knee-jerk reaction. I know you're saying reacting there. I know you're saying about Max with yourself and Ted, and you know, maybe I need to remind myself to be a bit more like Ted at certain times, in terms of, you know, you've built your business on certain values, and people are obviously supporting that. Like I'm saying about you, like just in general, like ourselves included, Rosslyn, I think it's important to you know, to try as best as possible stick to those values and not try to make money at all costs. Like, you know, like you know, it's we're not going to do things that are outside of our core values, and our core values are surrounded around, you know, and genuinely around empathy and trying to contribute to everybody that we work with, so, or everybody that we come into contact with. So Origin should be in a, like, we want to be able to contribute to Origin, not just buy coffee from them. That's all there is to it. Like, or, you know, with Cat, with some coffee from Cat there earlier on in the year, or whether it's our milk supplier or La Mazzocco, or we want to do our best to represent them. And that's down to our guests and come in every day. Like, we want to be able to contribute to their day. So like when we set up our business, you know, or our online business rather, you know, we're trying to figure out ways in which we can still contribute to people, that it's not just a quick smash and grab money sort of job, because we could just sell all sorts of rubbish on there and probably make a quick buck, but it just wouldn't fit in with who we are or align with our values. So I think it's just as difficult as that is.
That's the temptation for people, isn't it? Is to take advantage of this situation where people are moving online and just staying true to your core values and thinking, well, actually, we will get through this some stage.
Yes.
It's also about really balancing off between the two extremes, isn't it? I mean, at the beginning, coming into this, we all thought, God, this is going to be nuclear. This is crazy. We can't leave the house anymore. And equally, if you own a business now, you shouldn't be paying anything. And then the other extreme being, actually, you know what? It's completely normal. And every day that point shifts, doesn't it? From nuclear to things quite normal. And then, as you were saying, Tom, you have to balance off creditors and debtors and see, well, actually, you know what, money is still coming in, and things will continue, and we want to continue having a good relationship with our suppliers after this, and stuff will get back to normal.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think this whole concept of new normal is being bandied around as much as the word unprecedented, but effectively that is what we're facing. We're facing a new normal, and I think there's a saying that it takes 40 days to create a new habit, and we're definitely going to be in lockdown for longer than 40 days. So how we then shift from where we are now into the middle phase of whatever that's going to look like, because we still don't know. All we've had is a 5 p.m. update, to your point earlier, James, that, you know, on the television saying, we're going to be in this for a year, maybe. We don't know until there's a vaccine. So it's very difficult to start planning and thinking about what that's going to look like. But if we don't plan to succeed now as an industry and as individuals, then you could get caught short again if there's an announcement, you know, tomorrow that, all coffee shops can open again. You know, that has a whole different impact as well. So just sort of to bring the conversation to a close, it'd be interesting just to think about what that new normal is going to look like for the next sort of couple of months, and how, if at all, you're thinking about what that transition is going to look like, and how you, in terms of all of your individual businesses, are going to be handling that change to what the new normal will be. And I don't mind who starts that.
I think it goes back to, I think what James was saying is, it's a question of not rushing, and sort of seeing how you go. I think there was a temptation especially when that sort of the entrepreneur side comes out, and you're like, well, let's do this, let's do that. I mean, like, we were a victim of sort of talking about bread shops selling flour and pasta and all the sorts of things. And actually, in the end, we decided, you know what, we know coffee. Let's do something that's in line. There was a temptation to sort of rush into selling pasta and flour from your shops and all this sort of thing. And I'm very glad we didn't go down that path ourselves, because what we know is coffee. But I think going forward, I think there will be a little bit more time to consider the directions that we need to go. And I think it is about allowing your true ethics and values of your businesses to shine, and almost going along in a collaborative way, and, you know, starting the conversation as well, how can we support each other? The best ideas we've had to support our businesses haven't come from Magda and I, they've come from other suppliers that I've been talking to. And through those conversations, we've decided to move in different directions or stop different parts of the business because of the conversations in a collaborative way. And I think that's really important, because ultimately this is the first time that everybody here, everybody we speak to, is in the same boat. We really are. So normally in a business life cycle, it's your business at one time doing one certain challenge, and, you know, nobody really can relate to it. But now, you know, I could pick up the phone to anyone on this panel, and we could have a great conversation because we could relate to a lot of the different challenges that we've been going through.
You know, you talk to some people and you're open in a matter of weeks. You talk to other people and, like, it's 2 years. You know, it's just like, so it's just a case of trying to maintain, as corny as it sounds, but it's genuine. Just try to stay true to your values and trying to be flexible, I guess. And that's kind of all it is. And there's nothing else. You know, we have a coffee meeting with our team via Zoom every Thursday morning. And, you know, there's some questions that we're like, I don't know the answer to that. But they know about our core. Like, we always talk about taking care of our crew, because they take care of our guests, so we take care of them, and they know that we'll do that. So they know that we'll do right by them. So they trust us. And when we say we don't know the answer, they know that as soon as we do, we'll make the right decision. Like, it's going to be tough.
It's sort of almost rebuilding the trust and the relationship we have with our customers, and that's probably at every level in the value chain. According to a YouGov poll yesterday, only 36% of people are going to feel comfortable going to coffee shops once the lockdown is open, and that's pretty much one of the worst of all the results. I think only gyms and beauty and nail salons and pubs rated below that in terms of a trust of going back. But but at the same time, I think that's going to change as people are less afraid and more happy to go out, and there'll hopefully be a snowball effect where people are going to feel more comfortable again.
If you think about your local community, I mean, certainly in my local community, the businesses that have done that extra bit, so we've got a pub that's put out boxes and doing a lot of work with food banks. They're not a pub anymore, they can't serve drinks, but they're doing something in the community. None of the other pubs are doing anything. So of course that's the one pub that everybody's going to go to, right, as soon as we're all allowed to, because they've put themselves centrally to our communities.
In the sort of final week before we were forced to close, we were talking about turning one of our shops in Penryn, which is near Falmouth, down in Cornwall, into a grocery store. And the reason why we were talking of doing that is because people couldn't get bread. And actually, we had a shop that worked with a local bakery, Debara, who had plenty of bread. But also, I think at that stage, they probably hadn't announced the furlough system. So he was panicking about his volume. So actually, that worked in terms of providing the community with a service, but also then helping a local business with their volumes, this, that, and the other. I think when the government then said you had to close, we sort of decided that actually that perhaps it was being irresponsible to stay open. But actually, we had a really good chain of foods that people wanted, required, and couldn't get. And so I think that would have had value. And I think also when I think about Shoreditch, in that week, our sales in Shoreditch were still pretty high because people worked in the local offices in Shoreditch. They came in, they bought coffee for home. They were still doing that. So I guess it's difficult, isn't it? I guess it's whether, but also I guess if you're a standalone site and your livelihood is dependent on that income, and you need that income and that extra income. I can think of a few businesses down here that actually don't qualify for a loan, don't qualify for business rates because it might be tied up in their rent. They haven't been loaning long enough, so they don't have any profits. So all of a sudden they've still got bills to pay, but they've got no income. So for them, then it's a real desperate fight for how do they survive as much as brand values as well. So it's difficult. It's really, really difficult. I don't think it's, like I say, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to it.
I wanted to mention that you were talking about communication, and farmers are feeling really detached from what is going on in Europe. So they don't know if they are going to be able to sell what amount, what type of coffee. So farmers here, some of our farmers I work with in Willa, they focus on producing processed coffee, like naturals and honeys, especially naturals. It takes a lot of money, a big investment there, time consuming, you need more employees. So this is just an example of how they communicate to me and the fears they have. And they say to me, do you think it's worth it to go into this effort? Shall I just go to a more traditional way of production? Tell me how everything is working in the UK. Like, how are people going to change consumption here? Because that will shape the way I produce my coffee for this coming harvest. And I'm trying to talk to people. So I've been having great communications with Maxwell from Kelowna, with a foundation in Cornwall. Jack is a great guy that is also communicating on an everyday basis what is going on. But I don't have a clear answer to the farmers. We don't know how to shape production for this coming harvest. The only thing I say is that we need to be ready to adapt and to go from the simplicity of doing things. I think the more simple, because we won't consume the way we were consuming 2 months ago, a year ago. We are changing consumption. So my only advice I give them is that just be ready to adapt, do things as simple as possible. I think this is a key concept, being ready to adapt without compromising your values, without changing what you do. Here in Colombia, obviously, coffee is one of our biggest commodity, and the government is helping us incredibly to have freedom to carry on working. So we are going to the farms. We, as an exporter, have completely freedom to carry on moving and finishing what I'm doing. And I've been having great support. Like, I got stuck with an exportation for Kelowna, for instance, and Maxwell didn't cancel the contract. Maxwell was supporting me incredibly with this exportation, and having the government also supporting me to carry on moving freely. So it was amazing, but then we have complications with the freights. Everything was stopping and really confusing. So the exporting took longer, it was more expensive. So how can I adapt? How can I, every day is different.
More unique coffees are getting more attention perhaps on the website than perhaps house coffees, maybe our Resolute Espresso, whatever. So I think in terms of smaller lots, like we're going to release a geisha this week, next week, end of this week, maybe beginning of next week. But we expect that geisha to sell really, really quickly because we feel that actually online, people are looking for something different. I think people will experiment more online than they would generally going to their coffee shop. So I think I would suggest people are still going to be interested in brewing exciting coffees at home on a small scale. Where I would be concerned would be the bigger volume, general specialty coffees that feature in blends as espresso or single origins. Does that make sense?
Definitely. It's incredibly interesting what you're saying, actually, because I'm wondering how consumption is shaping, and you are giving me an incredible answer here. Just knowing what actually people want to consume from home, and how.
Yeah, I think people want variety. People want variety. So we try and release 5 coffees a month, so one every week, and those coffees will be featured coffees that Frida may find on her travels. They'll be red, natural processing, whatever, and we'll order maybe 800 to 1,000 kilos of each of those coffees to release into our shops, online, etc., etc. What we're finding now is obviously those 800 kilos we won't sell. So actually, what's more of interest to us is to turn those 800 kilos into somebody. If it's not a direct trader, maybe we've bought it through Nordic, is turning around to Nordic and saying, well, actually, rather than sending us 800 kilos of coffee from Tanzania, which will be 12 bags, can you send us 2 different coffees times 6, if that makes sense? It's still 12 bags, but 6 different coffees, so that we can then release those still weekly on our website to keep the engagement going. We just don't need as much of one as we did before, but actually we want to buy a bigger variety. Because I think people, certainly with our weekly subscriptions, fortnightly subscriptions, they don't want the same coffee every week. So that's a challenge for us, is we've always been able to fulfill that, but we can't fulfill that with such large volumes anymore.
I agree entirely with you, Tom. I think consumers like variety, and they're going to continue their at-home coffee consumption levels, because they're effectively replacing what they had out of home on the way to work, on the way, at lunchtime, etc., with their at-home consumption. And it's well known that people drink more coffee at home than out of home anyway, regardless of the fact that they now can only drink it at home.
At the same time, whilst customers may become more discerning and want to try certain things out, they will be much more understanding as well. Certainly within our generation, this is the closest we've ever been to a wartime scenario. So I have absolutely no problem queuing up for 40 minutes for my groceries. No problem that online orders suddenly take a week longer than they used to. And I think our customers will as well. So that the moment that we're allowed to open again with social distancing and long queues around the block, I think people will be understanding, and they will be understanding that maybe specialty coffee is going to cost more. They'll be understanding that maybe they're going to have to wait 10 minutes longer to get their cup of coffee.
Catalina, if we didn't have so many sort of forward commitments, we would be coming to somebody like you and saying, well, actually, what we want is 12 bags of coffee, but we want 2 bags of 6 different types of coffee, so that every week when we launch a new recurring subscription, we've got a different coffee to send to our customers, because we don't want to send the same coffees to our customers.
I'm just thinking about prices, what we pay and how we do things here at Origin, and thank you for mentioning that, because really helps me to shape new plans. The dollar is getting higher, so coffee for buyers become really expensive, but for farmers is a plus. But basically at the moment, the price of the commodity coffee you normally buy for a house blend, or the low grade specialty for a house blend, is becoming too expensive. So in terms of pricing, and the dollar going up and the oil going down, pricing are changing. So I'm really really curious about how things are going to be in that regard in May and June.
Much as our business is completely stopped with wholesale, the great thing about the website is obviously we charge a lot more. So we charge £7-8 for 250 grams, which would be £32 per kilo, as opposed to wholesale £15 a kilo. So actually there is more margin there. We are paid in advance on our website, as opposed to waiting for payment within wholesale, and also people pay for postage. So actually there's more opportunity for us to buy more expensive coffees, because there's bigger margins in selling onto the website. We're now selling coffee at £30 a kilo and being paid up front, as opposed to £15 a kilo and waiting 30 days for the payment. So I think, in terms of that, that's a good thing, because if the coffee growers are getting more money and actually the barrier of price is, barrier price is there when the margins are lower. When the margins are higher, it's not such a barrier, in my opinion.
Right.
If only we were still doing the same volumes, but
Yeah, well, yeah, that's yes, yeah.
I was literally just thinking that. I was thinking, wow, that could be a whole new way. That's a whole new business model right there. That let's go to coffee shops and just sell it all online. Shame about the volumes, eh? On that note, I'm gonna just say thank you very much to everybody, and to viewers, please subscribe, like the video, share the video. We just want to make sure that these conversations get out to as many people as possible, so that everybody in the industry and that's interested can hear how all of our different businesses are reacting, adapting, and coping with everything. And thank you to the guests today. So thank you, Tom. Thank you, Edwin. Thank you, James. Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Max. Thank you, me. And we can stop recording now.